Hi there. What legacy has Daniel Craig left as 007 after 5 films and a decade and a half as James Bond? Good evening, everyone, and thanks to everyone for joining us. First things first, can everyone hear me okay? If you leave a message in the comments, then I will find out, okay? Is anybody there? No comments, but well, nobody's saying that they can't hear me, so I guess I'm just going to continue with this. Right, tonight we're going to look at the highs and lows of Daniel Craig's tenure as 007, and 2 years after No Time to Die finally made it to the big screen, see how we feel about the Daniel Craig era and his legacy as Bond. Did it live up to the early promise, or did the Bond franchise get derailed at some point along the way? Views can and do change over time, and they should. So we may ultimately feel different than we did 2 years ago, and we don't know how we will feel in 2 more years as well. Just look at On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which about 25 years ago, it was held in very low regard by many Bond fans and the general public, and now it's highly regarded as many people think it's the best Bond film. So things can change in a big way. In the Craig era, Quantum of Solace was poorly received by most Bond fans in 2008 when it came out, but there are many more people now who defend it. I'm just waiting for that to happen to the man with the golden gun. I don't know what will happen sooner, though, that or on 26. Anyway, to help me answer the big question of the night of Daniel Craig's Bond legacy, I'm joined by Bill Koenig of the Spy Command. And welcome, Bill.
Thanks, David. Hello, everyone.
Okay, so Bill has been blogging about Bond and spies for just about as long as blogging has existed, and his Bond 25 timeline is essential for every what happened when moment on No Time to Die. And Bond 26 timeline too, although currently it's mainly about what hasn't happened and when, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I am also joined by Javier Trujillo. Do I say that right? I should, living in Spain.
It's very, very close. I mean, some would argue that maybe I don't say it right. I pronounce it Trujillo.
Trujillo?
Yeah. But a lot better than some of my friends have said before. Very, very close, if not bang on. So
yeah. Yeah, there's a bit of a different pronunciation between Spanish and
Mexican Spanish,
American Spanish. Yeah. So Mexican Spanish, and so it's okay. And well, Javi is a long-time contributor to the James Bond dossier and can be found on Twitter and Instagram, and who knows where else too. So let me just
blue sky, thanks to you.
Oh, we've got lots of. I can hear you. That's good. So, I meant to introduce Bill there with that's his details, and Javier, these are his details. I'll if you remind me near the end or some point in this live stream, I'll give those out again. And yes. In case you don't know me, I'm David Lee. I've been running the James Bond dossier since 2002, and I am author of The Complete Guide to the Drinks of James Bond. So, well, before we get started, please hit the subscribe button if you want to follow the James Bond dossier on YouTube, and that way you'll get notified when we do more live streams and when I just post random other stuff to YouTube. And well, if you've ever watched any of these live streams before, you'll know to expect the usual tech issues along the way. So hopefully we're pretty professional at sorting those out by now. And but we'll see how it goes. So, Bill and Javier, who wants to start?
Well, I'll start. I think the Daniel Craig era got off to a rousing start with Casino Royale. They Eon had gotten the rights to it sometime in the late '90s, I believe, and they had always wanted to do it. And Michael G. Wilson had said they were in a funk after Die Another Day, and they weren't sure where to go next, and they decided to start over. And they had the rights to Casino Royale, and they finally adapted it. And now it's a very short book, so they concocted sort of their own beginning and their own action end thing. But it was kind of a shot in the arm. It was a lot different than had been the case, for Bond movies. Well, certainly since '95, when the series got restarted following the 6-year hiatus because of legal issues.
I was one of those people that had to be won over at first. I really enjoyed the Pierce Brosnan era.
And
I really enjoyed Die Another Day. Despite some of the issues that the movie has, like,
you actually wrote an article defending Die Another Day for there are a lot of different Bond fans, and they've got a lot of different preferences in the world of James Bond. So I think we've always got to remember that any preference is completely personal. So I'm renowned for loving the Man with the Golden Gun, and most people just don't give it the time of day at all. So it's just one of those things. But can we talk about when Daniel Craig was actually first announced as James Bond? Because there was a big negative reaction from a certain corner of Bond fandom, and that was really picked up by the British tabloid press in particular. And why do you think that happened?
Well, Craig was a bit of an unconventional choice. He wasn't classically handsome. Of course, in Fleming's description of Bond in the novels, he wasn't necessarily classically handsome either. He was described in one book as resembling Hoagie Carmichael.
Mm-hmm.
There was the fuss made about his hair, which. And there was also a fuss made about his height, which he was definitely shorter.
There was a fuss made about a lot of aspects of him, in fact.
Yeah, physical aspects. He had done Layer Cake, which probably helped get him on the radar at Eon. Though I think I've seen references that there were other things he had done that also got him on their radar. So anyway, I mean, that was part of it, but I think some of it was as well. I think there were like a lot of Pierce Brosnan fans who were very unhappy about the way, he was kind of unceremoniously dumped. He got the word on the telephone. They didn't even tell him in person. And, I mean, I think it was a combination of things, but those were all factors.
Well, I think, from my perspective, I would have been 25 when Die Another Day came out. And that was like the height, like every Brosnan movie made more and more money. And then it was like clockwork. And then we had a video game to kind of tide us over until the next movie. And for him to be dumped when I at least thought we had one or two more. Like back then I thought a Bond would be Bond for 6 or 7 movies, like Connery and more.
He thought he had at least one more. I remember seeing him on The Tonight Show, and he said that he and Eon had some talks, and and I'll be doing another one. And
Yeah, I
like,
thought they
oops,
had that option for a fifth
yeah,
for sure. So it for me, I just didn't understand the move because he was very popular for his time, um and Daniel Craig would not have been one of the people I would have chosen either. I was more in fan of someone like Clive Owen to take over if we were going to go another route. And I remember Goran Visnijic, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, from ER
Yeah.
being cast or not being cast, but being one of the finalists and not having a hard time picturing it. But as soon as he got the go ahead, I went out and rented Layer Cake and thought he was really good in that. And just was like, okay, I'll give him a chance. But
Mhm.
I was very wait and see on the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, sorry if I repeat everything here, because I've already suffered the inevitable tech problems, and my camera packed up, so I've switched camera already. The only thing is, I'm now watching you on my laptop, and the camera's on my mobile, so it's not quite in sync. But hopefully everything will work. The thing that I remember about Daniel Craig being introduced was there was that press conference on the HMS Belfast, but and I thought he was I didn't think there was a chance that he was going to be cast as Bond when it was first rumored. I just didn't believe it. And when it turned out he was, I was thinking, well, why have they done this? And I remember my wife came back from work, and I said to her, this is the new Bond. What do you think of him? And she said, wow. And so at that point, I knew that he was the right choice.
Well, I'd always wondered too, because they did make that fuss about him being blonde, that
Yeah.
he's an actor. Actors change hairstyles, appearances. If you look at Colin Farrell in the Batman, like that doesn't even look like him because it's all prosthetics and makeup.
Mhm.
I thought it would be the easiest thing in the world for them to just dye his hair black, and he would have black hair when he played Bond, and then go look however he decided to look in any other parts.
That was actually one of the questions that came up at the press conference. Somebody asked him whether he'd be dyeing his hair, and he said, and he turned to Martin Campbell and said, "Are we?" And I think Campbell just said, it's to be decided, or something like that.
Well, and just context, this is an American TV reference. James Arness, his natural hair color was almost white. He's from Minnesota, and his brother is Peter Graves, and his hair is like very light colored. But anyway, when he started doing Gunsmoke, which he did for 20 years, they colored his hair dark. So I mean, yeah, it happens all the time in TV and movies. So and remember as well, the first publicity still they released of Craig, it was, I think, the day after, or maybe even the day of his yes, there it is
Yeah.
on the screen. It's like, I don't know if they colored his hair, if it's just something with the lighting to make it look darker, but that kind of made me wonder if they darkened his hair, but they ended up
because there's something interesting about this photo, actually, because this was released, I think, a few days after the press conference, or certainly early on, after he'd been announced. But then this one was also taken, and I guess that was released at about the time of Casino Royale, and it's he's got shorter hair like it is in the film, and he's got the Omega watch on, and so on, and he's looking much more like he does in Casino Royale. But it's interesting that they felt it necessary to redo this photo, don't you think?
Yeah, very much so.
I mean, you just flip between them, and he's looking much harder in the second one. I guess he hasn't bulked up so much at this stage, and the longer hair kind of softens his face up, or something like that.
We have a question in the chat. Wasn't Brosnan announced with the beard he grew for a movie? And the answer is yes. It was
Yeah.
at the press event. He had a beard, so now everyone knew he was going to shave it when he started filming. But yeah, so you can't always go by the announcement.
No, certainly not. No.
And they had a press conference for Skyfall, and he had he had stubble he had grown for that segment of the film where he wasn't shaving very much, and so that's why. So it was kind of weird to see him, at the press conference for Skyfall with all this gray stubble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I remember the Skyfall, because people were saying that he had a beard for the press conference, and I watched it, but I was watching it via a satellite feed from Sky News, and anyone who has Sky knows that about the red button and all that. And they announced, if you want to watch the Skyfall press conference, press the red button, and you'll go over to that rather than watching the normal news program. And I did that, but it didn't show the press conference in full screen. It showed it in like a quarter of the screen, and so I couldn't. And it wasn't. I don't think it was an HD broadcast either. So it was like, although I was watching it on a big screen, it was very low resolution, and it's shoved into the corner of the screen. So to me, it didn't look like he had a beard at all. So, which is what I said at the time on Twitter, and then it turned out to be completely wrong.
Right, because one of the tabloids, I forget which one, made this big deal. James Bond will have a beard, and I was thinking, what about Die Another Day? He had a beard in that too. Like, why is
he
this
certainly did. Yeah.
Why is this so startling? But we've said about tabloids real quick that they often have like a nugget of truth, maybe, but then they exaggerate, and that was a perfect case because they're making it sound like this beard was revolutionary.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it was more designer stubble than a full beard anyway. Maybe a bit more than designer stubble, but not much more.
Social media has grown so much, in the last decade even, and that's not something we had with the Brosnan era where we just had message boards. But it seems like since the beginning, like Craig has always been hounded by some kind of controversy, whether it's the stubble you just mentioned, or oh my God, he's drinking a beer in the next Bond movie. What happened? And they try and make all these big stories about these little nothing moments that really don't impact the film. But I think if anything, his legacy is always going to be that he was controversial in some fashion or another. Like that's always been like a hallmark of every era, be it slash my wrists to, oh no, it's going to be woke now. You can pick something, and there's some nitpick about the lead up to a Craig movie.
Yeah, because if we think about it from the very start, it kicked off on the wrong foot completely for Daniel Craig, and that's lousy to have a campaign against you by fans. It's a bit bloody pathetic, and even if you don't agree with the direction something's going, I think you can be at least try and be polite about it, but so there was that corner of fandom which was anti-Craig from the start, but then the tabloids picked it up, and they were making it very, very personal, which it's not easy to live with your life being bitched about, especially if it's got nothing to do with reality, which is what was happening in those early days. And I do remember reading that he said that he just had to stop looking at the media because there were so many bad stories about what was happening. You know, he couldn't drive a manual car and stuff like that, which is ridiculous because in the UK everybody drives manual cars. The standard driving license is with a manual car. You've got to take a special driving license if you only want to drive automatic. So if he learned to drive in the UK, he could drive manual. But you know, and that continued when they started driving, and then there was the thing about him losing teeth in a fight with a stuntman as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, and what else? Anyway, there was a lot of that stuff. I think also people would probably, you know, as noted in the comments, you know, Craig also had longer hair, which was connected to a role he was playing, and I think people weren't quite prepared for the way he sort of transformed his body. I mean, you know, I don't know how many weights he hit between the time of that press conference and the time they started filming. But you know, obviously he did that. You know, he had different hair, you know, different hairstyle than during the announcement. So I mean, whatever you could say, whether you like him or not, you can't say he didn't work hard on the physical end of
absolutely, because he was pretty skinny beforehand, and by the time they started filming, he'd bulked up. God knows how many pounds he'd put on in muscle, and so he certainly showed that he was serious about the role. And at the end of the day, when Casino Royale came out, it blew everybody away. Everybody loved it. The critics loved it as much as the fans loved it, and you know, I think that Eon was surprised about the reaction that they got to Casino Royale. Yes, they'd gone out to make the best Bond film they possibly could, but I think they far exceeded their own expectations there.
Yeah, which then kind of I'm keeping an eye on the clock here, so which then segues us into Quantum of Solace, which Casino Royale was still wrapping up filming when Sony put out a press release that the next movie was going to be out in May 2nd, 2008, which would have been like 18 months. And I remember reading that. I thought, whoa, I mean, that would have been extremely ambitious. And they had, you know, it eventually got pushed back, and they of course had a lot of issues, you know, even with the pushed back release date. But I think that movie, I think it had effects that are still felt to this day, which is starting with Skyfall. You would see Barbara Broccoli give interviews where she said, "We are not going to hurry for anybody. You know, we will do things on our timetable." And you know, it doesn't take a lot of deductive reasoning to think that Sony release initially calling for an 18-month production schedule was a factor, because then Skyfall comes out, and there was a Sony guy. He was an executive who like dealt with the theater chains, and he said next movie will be out in 2014. And then Barbara Broccoli and Daniel Craig did an interview, and they didn't mince words. They said he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And sure enough, the next movie came out in 2015 instead of 2014.
Yeah. Well, Eon works at Eon's own pace. Yeah, they are very resistant to outside pressure, which may be a factor at the moment as well. But we'll maybe talk about that another day.
Also, a question related to Quantum about the writer's strike and so to speak. You know, it obviously had an effect, but I think the effect was maybe overstated, in that The writer's strike, I didn't look up. I meant to look up the dates. I think the writer's strike was still going on like during the first month of production, but it got settled. And so it became part of the Eon lore that, oh, Daniel Craig and Mark Forster, the director, had to write on the spot. And they made it sound like the whole production was like that. But it's not true, because as soon as the strike was over, a writer named Joshua Zetmer came on board to do like the last minute rewrites. And like, but in the sort of fairy tale version of Quantum of Solace, he's the forgotten man. But and the thing was, there were stories that were written as Quantum of Solace was being filmed, talking about Joshua Zetmer. USA Today here in the United States had a story that mentioned him, and there was some other outlet that was talking to Mark Forster, and Forster said, yeah, we got Joshua Zetmer, and yeah, the script went fine. And then of course, we have a new storyline now about the filming of the movie, so strike that. It was awful.
And okay, I've got a question about Quantum of Solace, which is, if after Casino Royale, and they had this big success, and as I said, I think they exceeded their expectations. But basically, they had a director who was more in the line of John Glenn, really, wouldn't you say? He's just Juster. That's I don't want to denigrate Martin Campbell, but he's pretty much what's the expression
Journeyman?
I'm looking? Oh, sorry.
A journeyman director?
Yeah. He's he's not an auteur, certainly, and but for Quantum of Solace, that they'd achieved kind of high art with Casino Royale, but then they wanted to go for a director who they believed would give it art with a BA. And why do you think they might have made that decision? Because it didn't really work out, because he wasn't a Bond fan. I don't think he really got Bond. And even though, as I said in the introduction, Quantum of Solace is regarded much more highly than it was at the time by certain people, and it missed the magic that Casino Royale had.
Well, remember, before they hired Forster, there was another director they had approached named Roger Michell.
Yes, of course, yes.
And he has since passed away. But I remember he was interviewed, and he said they didn't have much of a script, and that made him nervous. So he took a pass. That he felt the story should be more developed than at least what he saw.
Yeah.
And so then they got Forster, and Forster. What was the name of that movie? It was an art type movie.
The Kite Runner.
The Kite Runner, yeah.
Yeah. So now all of a sudden, one thing that will evoke ire from Barbara Broccoli is if an interviewer says, what about a journeyman director? And it's like, we don't hire journeyman directors, we only hire artists. And that's a slight exaggeration of an interview I read, but she said, we do not hire directors for hire. Well, the franchise was built on the shoulders of directors for hire. Terrence Young.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's nothing wrong with that either.
No, I mean, a journeyman director, I hadn't thought of this till someone mentioned it. It's like Michael Curtiz in the old days. He directed Casablanca. He directed Yankee Doodle Dandy. Like, he directed all sorts of movies. And all of them many of them quite good. I mean, it's somehow the term journeyman director has kind of taken on this almost like it's a dirty term.
Mhm.
It's actually it's and it doesn't mean that at all. It means, they, at least I think it means that they can handle all sorts of things. And they don't take 50 takes
Mhm.
for every shot.
Well, I
Yeah.
think
Okay.
there's
Okay.
something with
Tim.
Oh, go
Sorry.
ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say. Tim's added a ton of comments. So thanks for that, Tim. But Foster was Craig's recommendation to Eon, I believe. He says. I don't remember that, but you may well be right.
Well, and of course, he did get involved with director choices in future Bond films. So apparently, which we can segue into, like, the amount of power Craig got. He certainly had more power than any other Bond actor. And I mean, I remember Pierce Brosnan wanting to do, like, meatier, more dramatic things in the series, and, like, he never really got. He got something of a chance, but not to the degree that Craig got.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, Daniel Craig had all kinds of input, and in the end, he in the last two films, he got an executive, non-executive producer credit. What credit did he have? A
Co-producer. He shared that.
co-producer
Co-producer
credit.
credit with two other guys, but he was listed first, of course.
Yeah. And but you know what? After, because he brought Sam Mendes on, or at least he suggested Mendes to Barbara. In fact, I think he met him at a party, didn't he? He met him at a party and said, "Oh, why don't you do Bond?"
Yeah, it's almost like he took it upon himself to act as an adjunct of the Eon human resources department.
Yeah. Great. Well, I don't think he's got a credit for HR though.
No. We got another question in the comments. Are producers today more focused on receiving award accolades for the films compared to how Cubby approached making them? I would say yes.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Okay. I mean, in the days of Cubby and Harry, basically what they were interested in doing was just making films. That was their art, and that was the reward for them. And that's how it should be. It's just I guess it gets more difficult as time goes on, and if you are not the first generation to create this franchise as well, you perhaps don't have the same drive, you don't have the same motivations. It's always been in Barbara Broccoli's life, but she's a different person to her father.
Well, there's a couple ironies about that. One, Harry Saltzman had earlier made what were dubbed the kitchen sink dramas, these kind of small, intimate films. And then he decided, I got to do something more commercial. And that's how he ended up getting the option on the Bond books. And then, of course, Cubby Broccoli got the Irving Thalberg Award, which is like the, essentially a lifetime achievement award for producers. So here he's doing these, mostly commercial films, and but he got this, really highly sought after prize from the film community. But I think also it's been a thing with Eon. It's like, yes, they get best song nominations, yes, they get some technical award nominations, but they've never gotten an acting nomination or a director nomination or any of that. And I think it definitely as a factor, because another one was what would become Skyfall. They made this big deal about hiring Peter Morgan, because Morgan was his prestige writer and he was going to work with Purvis and Wade. And then very little came of it. He ended up, he didn't get any credit in the movie. And during that delay in Skyfall, he did some interview where he talked about, I don't really believe in Bond. And, I think his time has passed. Like, what? What, you hired this guy to write your movie, and he doesn't believe in the concept? I mean, you don't have to hire fans to do a movie, but at least, you know, like, don't pee on it.
And there's something to, you know, the first 5 Connery movies. Granted, there's extenuating circumstances with No Time to Die, but the time between Spectre and No Time to Die is equivalent to 5 Connery movies being made, you know, from 62 to 67.
God.
So, and I think that with Casino Royale, like there was something different to it than the normal formula, because they went back and made it more about the character. And I have a friend who isn't into James Bond at all, and I had to make him watch Casino Royale, and he loved it. There was something about Campbell's approach that was different than GoldenEye, where he opened with the black and white and focused more on the, you know, internal dynamics of the character that resonated with new people. And I think that led to Eon trying to chase more of that, because they got a different type of accolade than they had gotten before. And you mentioned, you know, with Skyfall, I mean, that got a cinematography for Roger Deakins. Which
it's got great cinematography.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best, if not the best looking of all 25. So then what do they have to do next? They get Hoyt Van Hoytma to do Spectre after Interstellar. And, you know, they just keep chasing it. You know, they keep chasing whatever kind of, you know, acclaim they can get, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But in today's media landscape, like, you've got to keep up.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'd say that their priorities are maybe wrong there, because they need to look around and see what is working for other people and aim to meet the best of what is around if they can, if they're not going to be ahead of it. But, you know, doing it because they think it's going to lead to some kind of award or some kind of acclaim is the wrong thing to do. It's the wrong motivation for doing it.
And I was about to say, the Connery run in the 60s, it's not like they didn't employ talented people. Ken Adam won an Oscar. He just didn't win it for a Bond movie. John Barry won 5 of them, but he wasn't even nominated for a Bond movie, which blows my mind still.
That's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, and Freddie Young photographed You Only Live Twice, you know, and he had photographed Lawrence of Arabia. And Ted Moore, the original cinematographer, he ended up winning for A Man for All Seasons. So they had talented crew members, and you know, view it as like, you know, their career achievements, not just, damn it, we didn't get a nomination this time. You know, an aside.
And okay, and talking about Skyfall, right? So we've got Sam Mendes on board, but with Skyfall, well, with Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, they'd taken the Bond films in a different direction, which was much more serious. They'd got rid of all the gadgets, essentially. You know, there were still a few things, but you know, it was a long way from the Pierce Brosnan era. You know, everything had been toned down. There was no Moneypenny, no Q. You had instead M and Tanner, and was Tanner in Casino Royale?
He wasn't in.
He wasn't in Casino. He came aboard in Quantum.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
Villers.
Villiers? Yes. Yeah. So, anyway, no Moneypenny and no Q. That's the main thing. You know, Bond got his Q branch provided Aston Martin in Casino Royale, but there's no sign of Q. And then in Skyfall, you know, Daniel Craig was talking about how they had always planned on bringing back these characters, and you know, but they were all brought back as completely rebooted characters. Now they had a backstory instead of just existing in the Bond universe, and that oh god, I really don't like that, because it's something I've talked about before, and I think it goes back to Batman, Nolan's Batman films, that you don't need to know the backstory of every single character in cinema. It's sometimes you can just take a character, and the interesting thing is not how they got to where they are, but what they're actually doing at the moment. It's like in Star Wars with Darth Vader. Darth Vader's backstory is not interesting at all, it turns out.
Yeah. he hates sand, and that's why he subjugated the galaxy.
Yeah. And I don't think it was, well, Q doesn't really have a backstory, but he's certainly a reinvented character. And I think after Desmond Llewellyn, they had to do something completely different with him. There's no way they should have had a kind of stuffy Englishman or Welshman, sorry, as Desmond Llewellyn was. But with Moneypenny having this backstory about her being a field agent and being not very good at it, and so she becomes M's personal assistant, is kind of a bit lame, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and especially the way they handled it. Oh, no, she's not playing Moneypenny. No, she's Eve. She's a totally different character. Yes. Until, of course, and it's like, at the end of Skyfall, it's revealed, oh, she's Eve Moneypenny. And it's like, what's the purpose of this? It was like they were also coy about, Spectre. Oh, is Blofeld in it? Oh, we can't say. It's like, it's movie. You're calling
it's
the movie
Spectre,
Spectre.
but there's no. Why should there be Blofeld in a film called Spectre? Eh?
Right. And then there was this stuff about his name was, oh God, I can't remember now, but then it turns out, I adopted my mother's name. What? Your mother was named Ernst Eva Blofeld? I don't understand. But
oh God. Yeah, I know that was a mess. So, I mean, just talking about Skyfall, going back to Skyfall, because I agree with this as well. But Skyfall, that it was the year of the London Olympics, and Bond had his moment in the opening ceremony of the Olympics, when Daniel Craig did that sketch with the Queen, the real Queen of England, and they appeared to jump out of a helicopter and parachute into the stadium, which God knows how they got her to agree with that, but it's a bit surreal to watch, but it worked, and it was a fantastic advert for Skyfall. I think it's one of the reasons that Skyfall became the first and only $1 billion Bond, because it's just like, it was like this focus on London, and it was cool Britannia too, if you like, and the Olympics and Bond, and it was a few months later, Skyfall comes out, and everyone was still remembering that, and they were thinking how great Britain was. Look what happened to it. And it just went, the box office for Spectre, for Skyfall, went crazy as a result. So they kind of, I think their timing was great there. I'm not a fan of Skyfall at all. It disappointed me massively, but I'm in the minority there. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, to me, it reminded me of GoldenEye, but not the movie itself, but just the video game, and how, like, in between the GoldenEye film and Tomorrow Never Dies, this video game came out on the Nintendo 64, which totally revolutionized first-person shooters, and it became like this big cultural thing. Like people would get together and play multiplayer, and that for me, that just bled into Tomorrow Never Dies, because I would watch the trailer, then I'd go play the video game, and it kind of fed the fandom for a new generation, because Bond had been gone for 6 years. And now, like, it was a way to get younger fans who maybe hadn't seen the Connery movies or the Roger Moore movies. And I kind of wonder if Skyfall maybe did that for a younger generation. Like, there hasn't been a Bond video game that's captured the zeitgeist like GoldenEye 64 did. They've been pretty pale imitators, but there was something about that moment in time that kind of reminded me of the 2 early years of Brosnan's tenure. And I have to wonder if that created any new Bond fans who were writing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Patriotism.
So, certainly, the video game. I've never played GoldenEye, but I know that there were lots of people who their first contact with Bond was through the game. I think Calvin Dyson said that he played the game before he really knew who Bond was.
Yeah, and look at Calvin now. So
exactly. Yeah. So when he got into Bond, he really got into Bond.
Yeah.
And we've got a comment from Haphazard Stuff here, and oh no, that's the wrong one. Sorry, Tim. Actually, let's answer that. And I remember I didn't read them because I just wasn't interested in it. But yeah, I certainly remember when they came out, and she was called Jane Moneypenny. I guess that Eon didn't want to borrow that from in Fleming Publications. But,
they might have to pay somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, right around when, like, the Young Bond stuff came out, and I kind of fell off reading. Like, I never finished the Young Bond series, and I never started the Moneypenny Diaries.
I read the first Young Bond, but I kind of lost interest. Really, it's not that I hated it or something. It's just that I'm not that interested in reading kids' books, so it was as simple as that. Okay, Haphazard Stuff. Is it too crazy a theory that Eon is possibly waiting for the Mission Impossible films to end so that they can return to being the only big spy blockbusters around and don't have to be compared to them? It's something I hadn't really thought about, but it is possible, because there are lots of people who have said to me that they think that Mission Impossible outbonds Bond. So yeah. Well, what do you two think?
I was about to say that presupposes a degree of planning that I don't think exists with Eon, and I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that glibly, because remember with Spectre, there were all these internal emails and documents that leaked out because of the hacks at Sony, and there was a website that cataloged all the Sony hacks, and so I skimmed the Bond stuff, and if you read the stuff with Spectre, that wasn't very well planned at all. So I mean, but if that theory is correct, well, gee, guess what? The next Mission Impossible film's been pushed back a year, 2025. So,
well, who's to say Tom Cruise is done, because he started wasn't the first one 96 when it came out? And he's still going. And like, what was the gap between Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick? Like, who's to say that Dead Reckoning Part 2 is going to be it for him? He may make it appear that way. He may even try and pull a No Time to Die with it, but there's nothing to say that 10 years later he may not try and bring his character back for one last ride, because that's just what people do. And he seems to get off on taking on the challenge of the stunt work and pushing it.
So, the insurance on those films must be nuts. Can you imagine? Oh yeah, well, Tom. I nearly said Tom Ford then, but Tom Cruise wants to jump on a motorbike and drive off a cliff, and the stuntman's not going to do it. He's going to do it. It's like, what?
And it always feels like they are trying to top whatever Bond has done in the past. There's a
Mhm.
lot of similar like motifs with the halo jump and the motorcycle, and even Mission Impossible 2 is kind of like trying to be GoldenEye with like former agents going against each other.
I can never remember which of the recent Mission Impossibles is which. I get really confused between them. But there was one, and the beginning of it was like a cross between Quantum of Solace with the theater and the Living Daylights, and it was like, oh God, I've seen this before.
That was the 5th one, I think. The one that came out the same year as Skyfall. Or not Skyfall,
Uh,
Spectre.
Okay, God, we're running out of time.
Well,
the whole idea of this was to try and answer the question, what is Daniel Craig's legacy as 007? And God, we haven't even got through all the films. So, well, should we keep going a bit longer, or does anybody who's watching have? Well, in fact, do you two have to get off somewhere? Do you want us to wrap up, or do you want us to continue with this?
Let's go another 15.
Okay, another 15.
Yeah. I was going to say, well, in our notes for this live stream, one of the questions was, did they go wrong someplace? And I think the place they went wrong, and I think Haphazard Stuff will agree with me, is when they got the rights back to Spectre and Blofeld, you know, they shoehorned that in, and it just like, no, it just messed everything up. And then they retconned Skyfall, because when they did the press conference, as filming was about to start, Mendes was asked, does this have anything to do with the 2 previous Craig films? And he emphatically said, no, nothing to do. This is its own thing. And then it's like, oh, Silva was working for Spectre all the time. And I think, what they should have done, actually Haphazard Stuff first planned this idea in my head, is like they should have like put those rights in a drawer somewhere and just carry on, just let the quantum thing play out, and just, but I think that messed things up. I think it messed up the writing process for Spectre, to be sure. And then, of course, it's like quantum, we have people everywhere. No, Spectre, we're even bigger. And then it's Safin. No, even bigger. It's like an old radio.
Yeah, but when it came down to it, Spectre weren't very good at all, were they?
No, and it's like they go from we have people everywhere to, well, we have enough people to fill up a hotel ballroom, and then,
and they can get wiped out in one fell swoop.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, well, gee, and so if Safin could do that, couldn't like all the world's intelligence agency have done that a long time ago? Because they're apparently not very discreet.
No. It's they rushed things with Spectre and Blofeld, and both the organization Spectre and Blofeld were completely wasted as a result.
Right. And also,
he's supposed to be the franchise's big villain, but where was he really in the Daniel Craig era? Because he didn't really do anything that's too alarming at all. I mean,
he was the author of all his pain.
Oh yeah,
which he tended to pronounce Arthur. I am the Arthur of all your pain.
But I mean, if he is the Joker of everything, like, you killed the Joker then like a third of the way into the movie, like, to kind of elevate your new villain. And I don't know, it is a missed opportunity, and part of it is because of the gap that we've had, be it because Craig was tired, or legal troubles, or studio troubles, and It's kind of a shame that it's taken so long to get to this point. And I'm
Mm.
kind of wondering if we can even use Spectre again for the next Bond, like if that's even a possibility now.
Well,
Well,
just
I'd say they can, because they need to reboot things. So, how they reboot is the question, not if they're going to reboot, because so that means they reboot the character, and they can reboot everything around him. So I definitely see that there will be a place for Blofeld and Spectre in the future, but I hope they don't rush into it again, because we need to forget about this one. And if you go back to the early Sean Connery films, Blofeld was in there from the start, but he, in the background, he was never the main. Even though he was the puppet master, he wasn't the main villain of the films until Thunderball. No, not until You Only Live Twice.
Yeah.
And so basically they were building up to Blofeld for all those films. It was all the Connery films, with the exception of Goldfinger, actually, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think they need to take that approach, where Spectre is introduced, or at least Blofeld is introduced in the background somewhere. So you're aware that somebody's there, but you don't necessarily see them. And they need to do it with a bit more imagination, because they can't just follow what they did with the Connery films, but they need to think of a slant to do it that works for the 21st century. But
when Casino Royale came out, I thought, as I was sitting in the theater, I thought, okay, this organization is Spectre. They may not be able to call it that because of rights issues, but this is basically Spectre, and it'll be like, it'll be this mysterious thing you can't put your finger on. You see the some of their operatives, like Lashif was, but I thought that was really interesting. It's like this very mysterious. You're not exactly sure what it is, how big is it, any of that.
Mm-hmm.
But then in Quantum, so they could use the title Quantum of Solace. Oh, we call it Quantum, and they all wear Quantum pins out in public, and like, okay, fine. I do remember during the publicity for that, Broccoli and Wilson did an interview where they said, well, we could use Spectre if we want to, but Quantum, it's much better. It's more modern and all this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And then as soon as they get the rights back, Quantum, what's Quantum?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Quantum's rubbish. Oh God. Yeah. So we had we had Spectre in Spectre, Blofeld in Spectre, but then we had Blofeld and Spectre pop up in No Time to Die as well, which it's weird, because Christoph Waltz was seen at Pinewood, and I think he asked that people didn't say that he'd been there, but it was obvious that he was going to be in the Bond film. But there's one big question: why on earth did they bring him back? And then actually, why did they try and hush it up anyway? Because before the film came out, they said he was in it.
Yeah. It I don't know. I keep seeing this in the comments. I think now is a good time to address this, going to the legacy question. And that, of course, is Bond getting killed in No Time to Die. And people were mad 2 years ago, and they're still mad now. And
I think people go one of two ways with No Time to Die, because there are a lot of people who love it. There are a lot of people who are really annoyed that Bond was killed at the end of it, and there aren't many people in the middle. I'd say I'm pretty much in the middle, because I think that There are some really good moments in it, and there are a lot of elements that just don't work for me at all, including killing Bond off. But you know, it's I think if you go back to Casino Royale, what they did with Casino Royale took a lot of guts to do, because they were kind of heading in a certain direction and on autopilot. And by the end of the Daniel Craig era, they did something which, well, you could consider it brave or you could consider it foolhardy, which is to actually kill Bond off. And it's that's still hard to digest, isn't it?
Well, for people who don't like the ending, a common thought expressed is Bond is the ultimate survivor. It's like, you know, no matter what he's up against, he will find some way to
I mean,
persevere.
that's Skyfall.
Yeah,
That's the end of Skyfall.
yeah. But you know, it's like, now he's dead.
Haphazard Stuff's been making a lot of good comments, and Tim too. But Mr. White should have been the main villain throughout the Craig films. They had already set him up right from the start. He was good, even if his name wasn't Blofeld. Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's right. And of course, you know, his name, they called him Mr. White. That wasn't necessarily his name either. You know, they could have
no, exactly, yeah.
They could have come up with another name when, you know,
yeah.
when the cycle finally played itself out. It's revealed Mr. White's real name is blank, you know, and it doesn't have to be Blofeld. Yeah, and the actor, he was a good actor, and he, you know, and it was interesting in Quantum. He was like the one member of the Quantum leadership who was clearly the smartest, because you know, at the opera they all panic, and then, you know, which gives Bond a chance to take all their pictures with his smartphone. And then but Mr. White, he's playing it cool. He's not moving. You know, he's just they give him a one-liner, which was pretty good. So yeah, so clearly Mr. White, you know, based on the first two movies, was the smartest, most ambitious behind the scenes guy. So yeah, let that play out. I agree with Haphazard Stuff on that.
Yeah. I mean, you know, trying to answer the question of legacy, and you know, I think 2 years after No Time to Die, it means that it's given, I guess it's given us a chance to separate our thoughts a bit from the shock it was for me of Bond dying, and I'm sure it was a shock to many people. I don't think anybody was really expecting it, even though it had been rumored in the tabloids. But I'm still not sure really what to think of the film, and it. But the thing for me with the legacy is that with Casino Royale, and it seemed like Eon had got their act together, and that they knew what they were doing. That kind of ran out fairly quickly when Quantum of Solace wasn't as good, and then they kind of changed direction with Skyfall. But it seemed from after Casino Royale was released that they were on some kind of arc that I thought I was going to really enjoy. I thought it was going to be brilliant, but it's just, I look back at it and there are some. It started out fantastically, but and.
Well, what I'm about to say will actually partially answer a question we have about the impact on Jason Bourne, because you could say Casino had a little bit of influence. You know, the action scenes, the fights were a little tougher than they had been, but then they went really into Bourne with Quantum. And part of the reason when I first saw Quantum, I did not like the beginning, because Bond first of all, Bond didn't seem very smart. He's just kind of
Mhm.
recklessly going around. I get it, he's upset about Vesper, et cetera, et cetera. But like, it wasn't until the opera scene where like Bond is finally like using his brains, and
Mhm.
Bond is supposed to be both brain and brawn. And again, I know
Yeah.
he's upset about losing Vesper, et cetera, but that's that. And I realized later when I finally got a home video, a lot of my feelings about Spectre really caused by that first 20 minutes or so.
Mhm.
There's that one fight, he kills the guy, gets no information out of it. It's like, oh, you killed a guy, great. I didn't like that scene at all. He kind of recovered later, starting with the opera scene, but then starting with Skyfall, now we're in Christopher Nolan light territory. And Mendes specifically acknowledged the influence of Nolan.
Mhm.
Specifically The Dark Knight, the second Batman film by Nolan, and there was this one toward the end, when the Skyfall Manor, stately Skyfall Manor is on fire in the background, and Javier Bardem is standing in the foreground. You see the silhouette. He has a shaggy hair. He looks like the Joker from The Dark Knight.
Mhm.
And then with Spectre, then they got Nolan's director of photography, and they also got his film editor. So yeah, so it's not just Bourne. There's also Nolan was an influence as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah. No,
I always like to
absolutely.
push back on that because, well, I mean, there's
Mhm.
definitely the Bourne series and the Craig are very contemporary of each other, but I always like to think it's more akin to a Peter Hunt style with the quick cuts, because that's something that he innovated in the Connery era, and then we see it very prevalently in Majesties. So I like to think of it more of paying homage to their own past than trying to copy what's current, even though I mean, I can't deny that there are several people that worked on both productions, but that's also the nature of the business too, because people move from show to show to
Right.
show. And that was true back in the Connery era, where you would have people work on like Matt Helm and Bond, or just, going around.
Well,
But
but I go by, Mendes said it. I
no,
mean,
no,
he
he definitely did.
specifically did. So
Yeah.
I mean, do they evoke some of their own past? Sure, but I think, I don't know. Some people would love to see Nolan direct a Bond film. In my mind, we've kind of gotten Nolan light. So do we really want Nolan? Well, he has fans, and so there are a lot of Bond fans who'd like to see it. So
Well, with Bond, it's always been really reactionary, both to what was going on at the times and also to their own of war. Like, if you look at like Moonraker to For Your Eyes Only, or You Only Live Twice to Majesties, like, or Die Another Day to Casino Royale. Like, are we going to get that again with the new Bond? Like, are we going to take more of a lighthearted or fantastical approach because we went so grounded and serious? And
Yeah.
you're already going to have the difference between resurrecting him in whatever fashion, be it a complete reboot, or if they somehow decide to, I don't know, clone him or whatever, whatever thing they decide to do. I'm more curious of, like, because they've pushed the boundaries so much with what we thought Bond could be, like, how much of a reinvention are we going to get? Are they going to continue in that direction? And like, we're going to get a person of color playing Bond, or are they going to try and scale it back and just make it a more easygoing Roger Moore type persona?
I don't, I don't,
Yeah.
I don't think they would go
Sorry,
that far
Bill.
back. I apologize. I just say I cannot see them going all the way to a Roger Moore. I think they ought to lighten it up for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'd certainly like it to be much lighter than it has been. It's I would have I didn't mind it being serious, but it's just what's the problem really for me? It's just that it never once they grounded Bond with Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, then after that they said he was grounded, but he wasn't really. They abandoned that idea. So I think that's really my issue with that. So, I think for me, the Daniel Craig era overall, it was disappointing, and it failed to live up to its promise. It had some really, really good moments. I think, I liked Daniel Craig as Bond, but I think that Eon were trying to chase awards and get critical praise for art with a BA rather than what the Bond films are renowned for, which is just basically entertaining audiences, especially us Bond fans.
No, I think that sums it up very well. It's in some ways it's very hit or miss. It started off on a high. There were issues with Quantum on the production end. There were then they hit another high with Skyfall. Perhaps that was time, like David said. Perhaps that was much timing. The London Olympics, 50th anniversary of the film series. Spectre was a case of just surviving a lot of crap, which we learned about via the Sony hacks, and then No Time to Die. I don't know what happened there.
No, but just oh no, sorry, I just highlighted the wrong one because you must have just. Okay, let's answer this. Will the next new Bond actor have to be given the creative control they gave to Craig? Will that happen again with the lead actor?
I wouldn't count on it.
I think I wouldn't count on it either. The one that I wanted to highlight was this one from Tim. I think it was again. Yeah, none of this serialized format again. Go back to the standalone adventures. Yeah, absolutely. I think that was one of Bond's strengths. That there was a very rough continuity. I can't even say it now. There was a continuity, but it wasn't very strict, and it meant that you could have a 30-whatever-year-old playing Bond. Years after Connery had first played him in Dr. No, and that there was no issue for the audience with that. And yes, please just let's do one-off Bond films, hopefully with the same actor for a few films. But just give him his mission, let him go off and do his mission. None of this Scooby bunch, and that's it.
Well, it shouldn't have to be homework, like it should be accessible to old fans and new people. And you can't just show someone No Time to Die. I don't think.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that came before it.
I think actually I hadn't thought about that, but I think that's a brilliant point, because most Bond fans, they come into Bond somewhere along the Bond continuity, but it's very rarely right at the beginning. So you need to be able to put on a film, and you get Bond from watching that. You can't. That is why it's been able to pull in audiences for all this time and create a new audience, because you don't need to know all the other films. Absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the old days, you might get an occasional reference. Like in From Russia with Love, there was a quick reference to Dr. No, but very quick. In Goldfinger, there was a vague reference to Dr. No. Bond says something Felix about Jamaica. And then sometimes, they'd put them in the scripts and then take them out, because Live and Let Die, the script I have, it's late in the scripting process. It was just before they started filming. There is a reference to Dr. No. Bond introduces Coral Jr. to Rosie, and it says, yeah, me and his father, we defeated Dr. No. And anyway, they ended up taking that out. So yeah, it was always what there was very light and very much in passing, and it's not it's not like you had to have footnotes.
No. Okay, well, we're approaching 1 hour and 15 minutes of our 1 hour live stream. So it's probably about time that we wrapped up here. Should we just finish off right? The Daniel Craig era, his legacy in a sentence. What would you say it is?
The darkest of dark chocolate.
That's not what I was expecting you to say.
Don't believe what you hear, I think would be the key, especially, and just to mildly go off on a tangent here, because Bill's brought up numerous points of Eon saying one thing and it winds up being the other. I don't for a second believe that they haven't even started work on Bond 26 yet. If going by their past examples of statements to the media, I think it's fairly safe to say, despite Daniel Craig victory laps, that something's been worked on.
And okay, and we've got 007 Road to a Million. Are you going to be watching that? Comes out on Friday.
I'll give the first one a go.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, watch the first one. I'm not a reality TV guy, but I am curious.
No, I don't think. I think the closest I've been to reality TV is watching stuff like Hell's Kitchen with Gordon Ramsay. But I've never. They do this thing in the UK. I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, where they have ex government ministers eating kangaroo testicles and stuff like that. So, that's what I seem to. So that's what I seem to remember reading about anyway. So yeah, that's not my style of TV. So, but I guess in a Bond context, they could have them eating sheep's eyeballs, couldn't they? Bit of Octopussy. Yeah, rather them than me.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I don't know. I probably would need to revisit this in a few years and see if we've got a better idea of what Daniel Craig's legacy actually is for Bond, because it's all. I'm not sure that we've actually drawn any firm conclusions here at all, except we're a bit disappointed with it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it took far too much time to get anything going, and it feels like almost like it ended before it even began.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, and it was so long, but there were so few films in that period. Anyway, thank you to both of you for joining me today. Let me bring up your, first of all, Bill. That's where you can find Bill on his blog, which is the Spy Command, despite the URL, due to historical reasons that I won't go into right now. And he's also on Twitter. Yes, because I still call it Twitter, and I'm going to continue calling it Twitter. And Javier, there, he's on Twitter there and also on Instagram. And let me see. You can find me here, or you can find me here on YouTube. And what's this? Oh yeah, and I also wrote the complete guide to the drinks of James Bond, if you want to check that out. So yeah, thanks to you two for joining me, and thanks to everybody for watching. If you aren't a subscriber, then it would be great if you subscribe, and we'll try and get another one of these done soon. It's taken months to actually get the three of us together. Okay, thanks for watching.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.